You wake up before the sun does, and for a moment you don't move. You listen. There are no walls around you, no door, no lock, nothing between your body and whatever else is awake at this hour. Somewhere close, something with claws the length of your fingers is deciding whether you're worth the effort. This isn't a thought experiment. This was Tuesday. This was every day for hundreds of thousands of years for every ancestor you have ever had. Start here because it matters. You did not descend from something tough. You descended from something breakable. Push back the clock 2.5 million years. Early members of the human family were small-brained, slow, thin-skinned, armed with nothing sharper than a rock they happened to be standing near. They weren't hunting anything. They were the thing being hunted, and the proof isn't a guess. In 1924, a fossilized skull was pulled from a limestone quarry in South Africa, a young Australopithecus africanus known as the Tongue Child. For decades, researchers assumed a leopard had killed it, but when paleoanthropologist Lee Berger re-examined the puncture wounds, they matched something else entirely, the talons of a massive bird of prey, the same kill pattern large eagles still use on monkeys today. Your ancestor wasn't taken from the ground. It was taken from above. That changes the whole picture. The danger wasn't just prowling the grass at eye level, it was circling overhead too. There was nowhere safe to look. Ground level was no better. There was a hyena, Pachyrhocutta brevirostris, roughly lion-sized, with a bite strong enough to crack an elephant's femur like a breadstick. There were saber-toothed cats with canines longer than a human hand, cave bears standing 12 feet tall, armored crocodiles, even a New Zealand eagle capable of taking prey the size of a grown person. None of this is exaggeration. This was the actual neighborhood, and your ancestors lived in it without fire, without spears, without walls, clustered near the one resource every predator also needed: water. Every evening was a negotiation with extinction. So the real question isn't why predators wanted to eat early humans. That part makes obvious sense. The real question is how a slow, soft, unarmed primate walked out the other side of that world at all. The first answer is almost embarrassingly simple. They didn't go it alone. Picture it from the predator's side. A lone human at a water's edge is an easy afternoon. A cluster of 20, some already shouting and throwing stones, is a much worse bet. Biologists call this the dilution effect, and it's arithmetic, not metaphor. When you're one body among many, the odds of being the one that gets caught drop fast. You don't need to be faster than the predator. You just need to not be the unlucky one out of 20. Numbers alone don't explain everything, though, because groups didn't just dilute risk, they pushed back. Watch chimpanzees today. When a threat appears, they mob it, screaming, throwing branches, closing ranks. Early humans almost certainly did the same, and here's the part that's easy to miss. Big predators hate risk far more than we assume. A lion that takes a rock to the face isn't just bruised, it may be unable to hunt for weeks. And an injured apex predator is a starving one. Anything that raises the cost of the meal, noise, coordination, projectiles from several directions, is often enough to make it simply walk away. Then came the discovery that changed everything: fire. What's easy to underestimate is just how deep that fear runs in the animal kingdom. Almost every large land predator carries a hardwired aversion to flame, built over millions of years in a world where fire meant lightning strikes and wildfires, pure uncontrollable devastation with no upside. So when a predator smells smoke and sees firelight, its nervous system doesn't register curiosity. It registers retreat. Here's a piece of research most people have never heard, and it's strangely revealing. In 2011, ecologist Craig Packer led a long-term study of lion attacks on humans in Tanzania, and one pattern stood out. Attacks spiked sharply in the 8 to 10 nights following a full moon, when moonrise comes late and the early evening is at its darkest. Lions are ambush hunters that rely on darkness the way you rely on eyesight. Take away the light, and the odds swing hard toward the predator. Fire wasn't just warmth and cooked meat then. It was the first tool that ever let a human reclaim the night, turning the most lethal hours of the day into something you could actually sleep through. Before fire was reliable, though, there were two stopgaps. each with a catch. The first was height. Chimpanzees build a fresh sleeping nest in the treetops every night, and the anatomy of early human shoulders suggests we kept that climbing ability long after our feet had committed to the ground. A tree didn't make you invisible. Leopards climb beautifully, and we've found ancient hominid remains cached in old leopard kill sites to prove it, but it did shrink the list of things that could reach you down to one specialist. The second was the cave, a trap dressed as a gift. One entrance to defend, shelter from the cold. It looked ideal on paper. The catch is that caves were also exactly where the biggest carnivores already lived. Cave bears, cave hyenas, cave lions, they're named cave for a reason, and archaeological sites show human and predator occupation, alternating in the same caves for thousands of years. An uneasy timeshare with the previous tenant. None of this made early humans safe. It made them slightly less easy. Repeated across 10,000 generations, that's exactly the kind of edge natural selection knows what to do with. Numbers and fire bought time. What actually turned the tide was something you can't hold in your hand. Language. Here's the problem language solved. Without it, every dangerous lesson has to be learned firsthand, and a firsthand lesson about a leopard is usually a fatal one. A young member of the group who's never encountered a predator has no way to know it's dangerous until it's already in front of them. Knowledge simply dies with the person who learned it. Language broke that cycle. You could describe a threat without anyone surviving an encounter first, and that warning could travel to someone who wasn't even there, to a child not yet born who'd hear the story secondhand from a grandparent. Knowledge stopped dying with the individual. It started accumulating. This is where a strange piece of human biology fits in almost too well. Menopause. It's rare among mammals for females to live decades past their reproductive years, yet human women reliably do. Anthropologist Kristen Hawkes and her colleagues proposed an explanation known as the grandmother hypothesis. Once a woman stopped bearing her own children, she redirected decades of accumulated knowledge, which valleys were dangerous, which waterholes drew predators after the dry season, into the survival of her grandchildren and her wider group. Evolution, in other words, appears to have selected for keeping its most experienced minds around longer, precisely because that experience kept everyone else alive. Humans didn't just invent knowledge transmission. We built dedicated knowledge keepers into our own life cycle. Then came the shift from defense to offense, and the object that made it possible was almost insultingly simple: a sharpened stick. The oldest known wooden spears, roughly 400,000 years old, were found at Schöningen in Germany, and they aren't crude at all. They're weighted toward the tip for stable flight, shaped deliberately for grip and throw, carved from wood chosen for its properties. Whoever made them understood the physics of a thrown object intuitively, with no word for physics and no way to write any of it down. What the spear changed was the transaction itself. Before it, hurting a large predator meant being close enough for it to hurt you back, and in that exchange, the predator almost always had the advantage. A thrown spear rewrote the terms. Now you could wound something dangerous from 30 meters away, and a group could surround a threat so that wherever it turned, another spear was already coming. Predators learn fast from pain, and a lion struck once doesn't need a second lesson. Populations that repeatedly met armed, coordinated humans learned to avoid them, the same way wildlife today learns to steer clear of anything that smells like people. The fear slowly started running the other direction. Even unarmed, the human body carried a strange advantage almost nobody notices. On raw speed, we're unimpressive. Lions hit 60 kilometers an hour. An elite human sprinter maybe 45 for a few seconds before collapsing. But ask a lion to jog through hours of midday heat, and it will die of heat stroke before you do. Humans are among the only mammals built for persistence hunting, running prey down over long distances in warm conditions, because we sweat across nearly our whole body while most predators can only pant, which forces them to stop. Add an efficient upright stride and you get an animal that can't outrun anything over a short sprint, but can outlast almost everything over a long one. By around 50,000 years ago, something had fully clicked into place. Language had matured, social bonds had layered into complex structures, and the archaeological record shows genuine planning stretched weeks into the future. Bone needles, woven rope, fish hooks, cave paintings that weren't decoration but communication. Groups were now coordinating hunts and defenses at a scale nothing else in nature could match, and increasingly hunting the very predators that had once hunted them. The remains from this period show it plainly. The bones of cave lions and cave bears processed deliberately, their pelts used, evidence of ritual treatment. It had become a statement: we are no longer prey. That statement had a cost, worth sitting with honestly. The story of how humans survived the predators of the Pleistocene is also the story of what happened to those predators once the survival was finished. The woolly mammoth is gone. The saber-toothed cat is gone. The giant ground sloth, the cave lion, the cave bear, the dire wolf, the elephant-crushing hyena, the Irish elk with its 4-meter antler span, all gone. Across nearly every continent, within a few thousand years of modern humans arriving, the largest animals in each ecosystem collapsed. Climate shifts played a role, but only one variable shows up again and again in every region, right before the extinction wave hits: us. These were animals that had outlasted ice ages, volcanic winters, and shifting continents for millions of years. What they couldn't outlast was a soft, slow, unarmored primate that had figured out how to talk, how to remember, and how to teach. We were never the strongest thing in that world, or the fastest, or the best armed by nature's own design. We were just the first species that could learn faster than evolution itself could adapt. The predators never understood what they were up against. By the time they did, it was already too late to be afraid.